Good morning.
Good morning.
Another magnificent day, but today it's a little cooler, which is very nice. But yesterday the sunshine was wonderful. So yesterday, if you exercised, it had to be early morning or late afternoon, isn't that right? But today it's a little bit nicer. In our next lecture we're going to look at exercise, but what I want to look at right now is water. What type of water should we be drinking, and when should we be drinking it, and why should we be drinking water? A man said to me, everyone tells me to drink water, you told me why. So let me tell you why. So let's have a look at water loss in a day. So from the kidneys, now please bear with me here because I'm an Australian, so I'm going to say litre, but I think you realise in the US a quart is the same as the litre. So from the kidneys we have 1.5 litre loss in a day. From the colon we have 0.3 of a litre loss in the day. From the lungs we have a 0.2 of a litre loss. And what's a surprise to most is from the skin we have a 0.5 of a litre loss. So that's 2.5 litre loss, so litre loss in a 24-hour period. We need to be replacing 2 litres or 2 quarts of water. Well, what about the other? Well, in our magnificent breakfast this morning, we had water coming in through our mango, through our grapefruit, so you see your fruits and vegetables also supply some fluid, but we need to have at least 2 litres of pure water a day. So here's the rule of thumb. So 50 pound body weight to 1, well, I'll say quart for your sake, for 1 quart or 1 litre. So that means if someone is 100 pound, they should be having 2 quarts a day. And I guess someone gets very concerned if they're 200 pound, does that mean I've got to drink 3 quarts a day? Well, that's a good incentive for weight loss. And if someone's only drinking 2 glasses of water a day and they're 200 pound, they can get very discouraged at that news. So you know what I say, Rome wasn't built in a day. You just start little by little by little to drink more. But it's a good rule of thumb for children because children need water. And you watch, a child gets up in the morning, runs around and plays for a while, sit down for breakfast. What's the first thing they want to do straight after breakfast? Water. Because they sat to eat dehydrated. Same with the adults. How many adults get up in the morning, first thing they have is, say, orange juice and a cup of coffee. Isn't that the traditional breakfast fluids? And what are they doing when they have their orange juice and their cup of coffee? They're thirsty, they're trying to hydrate, but neither will hydrate them. How clean would your body be if you washed it in orange juice? How clean would your body be if you washed it in a cup of coffee? Water and water alone will supply what the body needs. And there's a book called One of the Body's Many Cries for Water. It's by Dr. Batman Geheldage. We'll call him Dr. B, an Iranian doctor. And his story is very interesting. He was in prison, political prisoner, and all the patients, well, not patients, but the residents in the jail would come to him because he's the doctor. And he had nothing. So he just kept giving everyone a glass of water. And, you know, they were happy because he actually did something. And every 15 minutes, he'd give them another glass of water. And so he'd come and see them, give them another glass of water. And to him, it was a bit of, what else can I do? But then he noticed something. They all were getting better. In fact, the word went round, we've got the best doctor here in this jail. Everyone's getting better. So he put his detective hat on. Why are they getting better? All I'm doing is giving them water. And out of that came his book, One of the Body's Many Cries for Water. And what's fascinating about his book, I'm pretty sure it's in the bookshelf there, is he goes into every single body function, because don't you love it when someone says, why is this happening? And then investigate and then write a book, and we can read that book and go, well, looky there. No need to reinvent the wheel. This guy's done it all. And what he found was the first place that water is lost is the stomach. Because lining our stomach, we have a thick mucosa lining, and in that thick mucosa lining is sodium bicarbonate. And that sodium bicarbonate is in the stomach lining, so that if any stomach acid tries to go through, it's immediately negated or neutralised, so that the hydrochloric acid doesn't eat out our stomach. But one of the first places that water is taken from in dehydration is the lining of the stomach. And so when someone is dehydrated, they can have a very thin stomach lining. And when there's a very thin stomach lining, there's no sodium bicarbonate in there. And so the stomach acid can easily start to eat its way through. And then because there's damage, our body's own microorganisms change roles and become the clean-up team. Remember Monday, where we looked at the cycle of life? And they change roles and become the clean-up team. Remember what its name is? Bacteria. And they've given them a name in the stomach. It's called Helicobacter. You've heard of it? Yes. Helicobacter pylori. Helicobacter pylori is blamed for stomach ulcers. Students, what's the cause of stomach ulcers? Well, the number one, it's actually dehydration. And Dr. B claimed that at the writing of his book to have cured 3,000 cases of stomach ulcer with water alone. Because the first place that the water is taken from is the lining of the stomach. And the first place it goes to is the lining of the stomach. So a glass of water, half an hour before the meal, the first thing it'll do is it'll thicken that mucosa lining on the stomach. So there's a couple of doctors from Australia, Western Australia, that got a Nobel Prize for discovering that Helicobacter pylori causes stomach ulcers. They were even putting Helicobacter pylori into someone's stomach and, yeah, stomach ulcer. But you know what my question is? Well, were they dehydrated? How much water were they drinking? Are they coffee drinkers? We had a pathologist attend our program. He said, we did studies on coffee and we found it took 5 glasses of water to make up for the dehydrating agents in 1 cup of coffee. Now, when you look at that, I think you'd agree with me, the nation's dehydrated. And Dr. B's book, One of the Body's Many Cries for Water, it actually explains why all of these ailments are happening. The other title to his book is, he's not sick, he's thirsty. The other title to his book is, subtitle, Don't Treat Thirst with Medications. Because when you do take medications, what does that do to your hydration status? Lessens it even more. I know as a psychiatric nurse, you'd be talking to the patients and you can tell their mouth is dry by the way they're talking. So what do? Oh, Coke, coffee. Is that helping? Not at all. In fact, it's contributing to the fact that they're still in the psychiatric hospital, because our brain is 85% water. From the neck down, we're 75% water. Our brain is a hydroelectric system. No hydro, no electricity. A person can actually develop negative thought patterns in a dehydrated brain. And most people know that their headache possibly is due to dehydration. My husband rang me one day, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. He was driving. He said, I don't know what's the matter with me. I've got a migraine. I can hardly drive. So you know what my first question always is? How much water have you drank? And he went, oh dear. He said, I haven't drank any water since I woke up this morning. So he woke up in the morning and had water. He had breakfast. Must have got busy, had lunch, and now we are 3 in the afternoon. He is chronically dehydrated. So I said to him, please don't drink a whole glass of water. Please just have half a glass of water. A few minutes later, another half glass of water. A few minutes later, let it little by little by little go in. He said after the first glass, the migraine went to a headache. And after the second glass, the headache went to a dull ache. And after the third glass, he had no headache. Now, isn't it nice if you can resolve every headache just with water? But unfortunately, not every headache is just due to dehydration. But I like to use the process of elimination. Let's try water first. And Dr. Batman Geheldage in that jail was finding all these problems resolving just because he was giving water. In fact, when the politics changed and he was finally released, he said, look, do you mind if I stay? They've never had anyone say that before. He said, I'm right in the middle of this very interesting research. And he's presented at in medical journals, he's presented at medical conferences. And out of all of those talks he gave, he's written the book, One of the Body's Many Cries for Water. But it's not a popular message, is it? You can't make a lot of money out of water. I want to relate to you something that happened at our retreat. This was down in Melbourne. We had a guy come, he was from South Africa, he was early 50s. He came with his wife. He did not want to be at our health retreat. And we quickly worked that one out. He was very short and bristly, and his wife was looking very uncomfortable. She'd paid the whole amount, so they had to come. Wise wife. She didn't put a down payment, she paid the lot. And as I'm asking him questions, he was very short in his answers. I said, how much water do you drink a day? 2 litres. I thought, oh, well, he's a good water drinker, let's move on. Are you on any medication? Yes, I am. I'm on a different medication every month. I've got Helicobacter pylori in my stomach. How long have you been doing this for? 5 months. That's a different antibiotic every month to kill Helicobacter pylori. And every month when he goes back to the doctor, they just do breath tests now. It's still there. What's the definition of insanity? To do what you've always done and expect different results. I'm not criticising him. I think he and the doctor are hoping that the next antibiotic will really wipe it out. I said, are you interested in looking at an alternative? He said, no, thank you very much. I'm very happy with my medication. God's government is a government of freedom, and what's freedom based on? Free choice. So I respect his choice. Even if I don't agree with it, I must respect his choice, and I do. After the first lecture where I talked about the body's ability to heal itself and how it will heal itself when you give it the right conditions, he and his wife came up to me and said, that made more sense than anything we've heard for a long time. We've actually agreed to let you advise us on what to do with this stomach. I said, well, I can't tell you what to do. Only you and your doctor have authority over your medication. But this is what I'd do. I would stop that antibiotic and I would take the herb I'm going to advise, which is slippery elm. Slippery elm coats, soothes and heals the whole lining of the gut. It's the powdered bark of the slippery elm tree. You put water with it and it goes, one could say, a little slippery, and it just coats and soothes. And I said, it's your choice. He said, we're willing to do that. He said, I've had stomach pain for 25 years. He said, I've been all over the world. No one can help me. So every lecture, this man got a little bit more interested and a little bit more interested. And at the end of the week, when he sat in front of me for the final consultation, he had a great big smile on his face. I said, you've got something to tell me, haven't you? He said, yes, I've had no stomach pain for 2 days, first time in 25 years. I said, that's great news, Paul. He said, but I've got more news. And this is what excited me even more. He said, I've worked it out. We're the doctor. This is the mirror. I'm just the teacher. And I love teaching people how to be their own doctors. I said, what was the cause, Paul? He said, I was drinking 1 litre of water with every meal. So every meal, he's watering down his hydrochloric acid. Did you know that hydrochloric acid is antibacterial, antifungal? So if your hydrochloric acid's strong, Helicobacter pylori can't survive in the stomach because hydrochloric acid is antibacterial. Interesting. I want to show you what's happening, and he's drinking nothing between meals. So every meal when he sat to eat, he's dehydrated, no stomach lining. So let's have a look at what's happening. So here's Helicobacter pylori just doing its job, and by the way, every month when the antibiotic comes in, it kills the Helicobacter pylori off, but because the damage is still there, more Helicobacter pylori comes along to clean it up. See, if you don't turn the tap off, you're still going to be mopping up. When he sits to eat, hydrochloric acid's released, and hydrochloric acid is just about to come down and wipe out Helicobacter pylori. And then what does the man do? Has a great big drink of water. What does that do to hydrochloric acid? We all remember from chemistry days, water dilutes acid. Helicobacter pylori goes, whew, that was close, chomp, chomp, chomp. He learnt in the lectures the importance of drinking between meals and not with meals. And you've probably noticed yourself, if you sit to your meal hydrated, you don't need to drink. We did talk about it yesterday. I think it's a habit, reaching for the cup. But as you'll see tomorrow, you can rewire your brain. You can train it out. So he's drinking between meals. So what does that do to his stomach lining? Puts a nice thick lining on the stomach. And then when he smells, starts to eat food, hydrochloric acid's released, hydrochloric acid comes down, wipe out, wipe out, wipe out. His body healed itself. We've got everything we need in this body to heal us. We just need to give it the right conditions. How simple is that? If someone says to me, I've got Helicobacter pylori, I said, congratulations, we all have. It's only when it's in a large amount, and then the question is why? Why is it in a large amount? Remember Dr. B? He cured 3,000 cases of stomach ulcer just with water. Just with water. How simple is that? So simple. So this man has been all over the world trying to get help, and then he came to a health retreat in the hills in Victoria and learnt the conditions to give his stomach for healing. So we come down the gastrointestinal tract and we come to the pancreas. Here's the pancreas. And the pancreas releases 2 hormones into the blood, and it also releases hormones into the gut. Or enzymes into the gut, hormones into the blood. What are the hormones going into the blood from the pancreas? It's insulin and glucagon. Both of these hormones require a large amount of water to be able to be made properly. So if someone's dehydrated, can you see that can contribute to diabetes? From the gut, they're great big long names, so I'm just going to give you, there's about 4 enzymes that are released to finalise the digestion of our food. These enzymes, there's one enzyme that finalises starch digestion, there's another enzyme that finalises fat digestion, and that's your polyunsaturated, because remember your saturated is broken down under the tongue, the enzyme under the tongue. And there are two enzymes that finalise protein digestion, and that's why when someone has pancreatic cancer, they often die very quickly, and they die of malnutrition because the pancreas can't release those enzymes to finalise digestion. And if digestion's not finalised, the food can't get out of the gut and into the blood. So let's keep going down the gastrointestinal tract and look at the effect of water. So moving on down the gastrointestinal tract, we come to the colon. And one of the main functions of the colon is to take water out so stools are formed. If a person is dehydrated, more water gets taken out than should be taken out, so we're left with rabbit pellets and cement. So constipation can be a result of dehydration. Again, it's contributing factors, and what I love about these laws is there's not one law. It's a little bit of all of them. And with some people, it's majorly lack of water. But with other people, some people say, but Barbara, I'm drinking all my water and I've still got constipation. So you know what my response to that is? Well, it's not the water. Must be something else. And notice with the man with the Helicobacter problem in his stomach, he was drinking 2 litres of water a day, but he was drinking it at the wrong time. That's why the description here is use of water. There's a time to use water and there's a time not to use water. Now, if someone's thirsty after a meal, by all means have a few mouthfuls of water. A few mouths of water is not going to greatly reduce the effectiveness of the hydrochloric acid. But most people that need to drink with their meals is because they sat to the meal dehydrated. So I say to parents, get the children drinking. The mother, the father, look at the clock. Half an hour, 3/4 of an hour before the meal. Get them to drink. Get them to drink then, because the mother knows that if they don't, they're going to want to drink straight after their meals. And if they want to drink after their meals, I would say just have a few mouthfuls, sweetheart. Just a few mouthfuls. So in that way, you're protecting the digestion of your children. But as you'll see tomorrow, the front part of our brain is not fully developed till we're 30. This is foresight. Children don't have foresight. You have to be the foresight for them. What often happens, especially with stomach, is that a couple of hours after the meal, there's often a hunger feeling. But it's usually dehydration, because the body it's not often able to decipher between thirst and hunger. And so always have water. And remember, children say they're starving when they're bored. And it's in a mother heart to want to give the child what it needs. You see, it's a hard thing for a mother to go from here in giving the baby every single requirement to coming to be a toddler and starting to encourage the child to think for themselves a little bit and not give them every single thing they desire. So I would say to my children, oh, it's time for water. Must be one of the body's many cries for water. Time for water. I don't want water. Oh, I'm so sorry, sweetheart. Because if you don't drink water, you can't have lunch. Your choice. See, put the choice back on them. Choice back on them. And then when everyone's sitting to lunch and they're not there, oh, I'm hungry. I know, sweetheart. See, you're always very kind. So if you drink this water now, I'll let you have your lunch in 15 minutes. You know, often you only have to do that once or twice and they get the message. Drink water. It's good for them to have their little bottle, and then you can see. And often, I know with my little granddaughter, when I was staying there, I'd say, okay, when you get down to there, your tummy will be ready for lunch. And they love goals. Children love goals. So they're drinking and they're looking at drinking, you know, it's achieving something. Let them achieve something. I had a lady say to me one day, she said, oh, Barbara, you must spoil your grandchildren. I just smiled sweetly because I knew she wouldn't like my answer. So she pushed me. I said, no. What does spoil mean? Ruin something beautiful. Our grandchildren love coming to Misty. Do you know what they do all day? Play in the creek. Play in the creek. Sometimes I come home and there's piles of clothes. They've all fallen in the creek. And if they're muddy, I give them the hose and a scrubbing brush. Sorry, sweetheart, can't put that one in the washing machine. So you're never angry. It's anger that hurts children. But cause and effect, best way to learn. I just go to the second-hand shop, or you call it the thrift store, and get all these clothes. So we've got lots of clothes, so it doesn't matter if they fall in the creek. So no wonder they love Misty Mountain, because they're free. If we lived here, that's where they'd be all day down that creek. Down that creek. So children, you know, often they're just smothered. They're smothered, and they're They're the unhappy children. Some people say to me, but Barbara, if I drink water, I'm just running to the bathroom all day. And some people say, but Barbara, if I drink water, my legs swell. Do you know what that tells me? The water is not getting inside the cell. The cell is surrounded by what's called a bilayered membrane. This is a double-layered membrane. And the water needs help to get into the cell. So how do we help the water get into the cell? There are 4 vital elements needed for life. Let's look at the 4 vitals. These 4 vital elements needed for life indicate what we need. Number 1 is oxygen. Now that's not a surprise. Oxygen's the most vital element needed for life. Number 2 is water, and that's not a surprise. But what's a surprise to most people is the 3rd vital element needed for life is sodium. You think about it, we're salty people. Our tears are salty, our blood's salty. Baby swims in utero in salt water. Dr. Jacques de Langry, he's written a whole book on salt. It's called Sea Salt's Hidden Powers. And he calls our internal fluids our internal ocean. Seawater. Let's have a look at the largest concentration of sodium we find in seawater. It has 92 minerals. And I did mention this the other day, so we'll recap. So 30% of those 92 minerals is sodium, and 50% is chloride, approximately. And because these are they're the minerals in the largest amount, what man does is he scoops off the sodium chloride crystals, bleaches it white, puts aluminium with it, and comes up with table salt. And unfortunately, sometimes it's called sea salt. So be careful when they see sea salt. Sea salt contains how many minerals? 2. And these are such harsh minerals that if you were to inject them straight into the blood, the person would die. And if you mix a teaspoon of table salt with a cup of water, that amount, and fill up a whole tank and put the fish from the sea into that solution, they all die. So it's actually a dangerous salt. It's actually a poison. And when it goes into the body thinks it's getting all of those minerals, but it's not. It's just getting 2. And it causes an imbalance in and out of the cell. The 4th vital element needed for life is potassium. And you get nice amounts of potassium in on your fresh fruits and vegetables. And cayenne pepper is high in potassium. So the highest concentration of mineral inside the cell is potassium. The highest concentration outside the cell is sodium. And there are sodium-potassium pumps that are in the membrane around the cell. And these sodium-potassium pumps are constantly going like this, maintaining the balance in and out of the cell. But when someone has high amounts of table salt, have you noticed people put it on and they don't even taste the food? That's because the table salt, the sodium chloride, is so harsh that it kills the taste buds. So no wonder they have to put so much on. Kills the taste buds. But the salt that we use is Celtic. And the Celtic salt, and it's called the Celtic salt because it's hand harvested by the traditional Celtic method. It's in Brittany, in France, 4.5 million acres of these beautiful salt flats where it's a hand harvested sea salt. Please don't balk that it's a bit more money than others because you're looking at a traditional hand-harvested sea salt. So the Celtic salt, it contains 82 minerals. How come not 92? Some are in such pico proportions, barely measurable, that it's inevitable that a few are lost. See, these 2 minerals are so harsh, they need all the other minerals to soften them or buffer them. And one of the values of the Celtic salt is that it contains 3 magnesiums. And that's why it's so moist, because magnesium is a water-hungry molecule. And that's why the true Celtic salt will always be wet. Have you noticed how wet it is? That's because it's got 3 magnesiums. And those magnesiums are helping to hold the other minerals in suspension inside the crystals. Even to the point that in parts per million amounts, there's even iodine in there. Iodine. When the seas crashes, the iodine goes into suspension and floats across and lands on the land. And that's why vegetables and fruits that are grown in coastal areas, they do have traces of iodine in them. But the hand-harvested sea salt that is usually dried quite quickly, because as I mentioned the other day, you've got these peninsulas like this, and you've got all the salt flats are all in the peninsula, and so the wind and the sun rushes past that, and they're dried sometimes in 24 hours and then harvested. And what that does, that helps to retain the iodine in micro amounts in those little crystals. So when you crunch the crystal in your mouth, you're releasing those gases, those mineral gases. We don't need much iodine, but when you have a crystal of Celtic salt with every glass of water and do that crunch before you have your water, you're getting consistent, tiny amounts of iodine, but that's all we need. Because when someone takes iodine, do you know it's out of their body in 20 minutes? And if a person buys iodized salt, that iodine in the iodized salt is not, it's an industrial iodine. But when you open the iodized salt, within 1 hour, it's evaporated. And when you've got iodized salt, what have you got now? 3 minerals. But within about an hour of opening them, even that iodine is evaporated. But the iodine in parts per million, micro amounts that are contained in the Celtic salt in that crystal form. That's why the crystal form is the best. And if you put those lumps, they're lumps of crystals, put it into your cooking even 10 minutes before you serve it. And then they dissolve and go through the cooking. It is the best way to get your minerals. Because of the 3 magnesiums in Celtic salt, one is magnesium sulfate, and that's the Epsom salts. Another one is magnesium chloride, and the other magnesium is magnesium bromide. Because of the property of magnesium, that it's a water-hungry molecule, when you put that Celtic salt in your mouth and you crunch it and you release those minerals, the mucous membranes in your mouth absorb the minerals and it's taken to the cell. Then you have your water. The magnesium pulls the water inside the cell. It's the quickest way to hydrate a body. So when someone says they don't drink water because they've got to go to the bathroom all day, I'd like to suggest it's because they're missing the mineralized salts. And if someone says, but I drink water, my legs swell, all that water is extracellular, not intracellular. Something else happens. When that water is pulled inside the cell, there's a little motor inside the cell membrane, and when the water rushes through the membrane, it causes that little motor to spin, which gives us a unit of energy. Isn't it incredible what they know about the inside workings of the cell? So when everyone at work is going to have a cigarette outside and a cup of coffee to get some energy, all you have to do is find a tree, breathe in and out through your nose, have the Celtic salt, the glass of water, and you'll go in charged. Maybe take your shoes off and walk around the tree a few times. I wouldn't do that if there were dog droppings. Hopefully there's a park that's a bit clean where you are. When I was in Germany, I was in a little town called Bad Orb. Apparently bad means bath. And they had Knipe water cures there, and you could do a Knipe barefoot 4.5 kilometre walk. Oh, it was such fun because the grass was just beautiful. And we walked on gravel, then we walked on sand, then we walked on the grass, and there was a little creek, and we'd walk through the creek, freezing cold. And then there were ropes where you could hold on as you're walking through the creek, and then we went up a hill. That was my 4.5 kilometre Knipe barefoot walk. That was a lot of fun. It was winter. Well, it wasn't winter, but in Germany it was cold. So we were well dressed, but because you're moving all the time and you're going on different things, it just massages the bottom of your feet. Do you know, these Knipe water cures, they've been lost, haven't they? It's time to revive these simple water ones. And have you had your water lecture with, water therapy lecture with Vanessa? Yes. Fascinating, isn't it? Just the simple things that you can do. So when a person is having a lot of the table salt and they're too busy to eat their fruits and vegetables, so much fast food, it lacks the minerals. What's happening to potassium inside the cell? It's dropping. What's happening to sodium outside the cell? It's actually getting too high. And there is a small amount of sodium inside the cell, but what happens with osmosis and diffusion is the highest concentration merges into the lower. The potassium and sodium pumps aren't able to manage, and so sodium levels inside the cell, they go too high. And that causes the cell to swell. What's that called? High blood pressure. The doctor's right. Table salt will get the blood pressure up. But Dr. Jacques de Langry, when he gets a patient with high blood pressure, you know what he puts them on? He puts them on the Celtic salt. Because what that does is that gets a proper balance of fluid in and out of the cell. And how many, in nutrition world today, how many people have gone from overdoing the table salt to no salt? And both extremes are dangerous. And one of the reasons why some television stations won't have me on them is because of my stand on oil and salt. Because the medical message is, if you want to conquer blood pressure, what do you got to do? Stop the oil and the salt. But there's oils and there's oils, as we saw yesterday, and there's salts and there's salts. Lining the gastrointestinal tract are villi. And we looked yesterday, up the middle of the villi, you've got your lactein, you've got your blood vessels all through. And anything that goes into our gastrointestinal tract is not part of us until it gets into the blood. And so right now we had breakfast about, how long ago we have breakfast? We had breakfast 2 hours ago we began breakfast. And so bits of food are starting to come through. But how do they get into the blood? They're coming out of the stomach, and this is in the small intestine. Well, there's a receptor site that takes in the glucose. But that receptor site has a carrier. Let's call it like the ticket to get on the train. It has a carrier. And the carrier says, I will not take you glucose unless you come with a molecule of sodium. Now, I just read this in my nurse's anatomy and physiology book. So I memorised the statement so I could give it to you from the horse's mouth. Sodium is the main transport system to get glucose through the brush border and into the blood. I thought I'm going to memorise that one because it's straight from the anatomy and physiology book. So if we don't have enough sodium, what happens to that glucose? Comes in one end and out the other. It can't actually get into the cell. And weren't those red lentils magnificent this morning? And one of the reasons they tasted so good, because they had salt. I remember one morning, because they're Michael's favourite, the red lentils. He always has them with avocado. And he has the sourdough toast with avocado, red lentils on top. It's very nice. So one morning we're sitting down, he had a mouthful, he went, ah! I said, what's the matter? He said, no salt. Sorry, put salt in. Another morning he went, I said, what's the matter? He said, too much salt. Oh, have some more avocado. Because what happens, I'm busy, I get a phone call. And when I get a phone call, sometimes I forget if I put the salt in, I haven't put the salt in. Mind you, it doesn't happen much. Most of the time it's magnificent. But the point of my story is too much salt is not nice. Not enough salt is not nice at all. So there's a balance. There's a balance. And Matthew chapter 5, verse 13, the Bible says, "Ye are the salt of the earth. If the salt has lost its savour, wherewith shall it be salted? It is henceforth good for nothing but to be cast out and trodden under foot of men." I would like to suggest this table salt has lost its savour. It's lost all the other minerals. And what does the Bible say now? It's now good for nothing but to be cast out and trodden under foot of men. And I thought of that verse when I was in Minnesota in the middle of winter and they're throwing salt on the road to melt the ice. And I said, there we are, that's what you can do with salt. And did you know that most salt is industrialised salt? And that industrialised salt is made for industry. But the sad thing is, some of it's sent to humans. That's horrific, isn't it? No, the salt we humans should be eating is the hand-harvested sea salt that's got all of its minerals in it. And minerals basically glues us together. Very important to get the minerals inside the cell. And remember, calcium's called the king, because while calcium gets in, all the other minerals piggyback on the back of calcium. But calcium can't get into the cell by itself. Okay, students, I'm starting to ask you questions. How does calcium get into the cell? Sun, vitamin D. So vitamin D is essential to pull the calcium inside the cell. Glucose. Glucose is the number one fuel used by every cell in the body. How does it get into the cell? Any guesses? Insulin. Insulin's the key that unlocks the door to get the glucose into the cell. And that's how the glucose gets in. But let me give you a scenario of what's happening sadly today with many people. And many are sick through ignorance. They're not drinking enough water because they don't want to keep running to the little house. They're not having the whole salt, so they're lacking magnesium, and the highest source of magnesium is your dark green leafy vegetables, and they're not having their vegetables. So the bit of water they get is not getting in. They're not going out in the sunshine because they believed what the media told them, that the sun's going to give them skin cancer. So they don't go into the sun, so they're vitamin D deficient, so the calcium and the minerals can't get into the cell. And they believed what the media said, that fat is dangerous, so they're on a fat-free diet, always hungry. Did you know that fat gives the feeling of satiation or satisfaction? So when someone's on a fat-free diet, have you noticed they eat all day long? They're hungry all day long. So they're eating too many carbohydrates, because isn't that your quick food? There's your quick food, all the carbohydrates. So they're wearing out their pancreas. Now the pancreas isn't releasing insulin and the glucose can't get into the cell. See, that's why I call this the CBD, the Central Business District of the human body. So the body looks at this, the water can't get in, the minerals can't get in, the glucose can't get in. And so now the body says, well, looks like we're going to have to do our last resort. Let's just force it into the cell. What's that called? High blood pressure. So high blood pressure can be a result of malnutrition. High blood pressure can be a result of dehydration. High blood pressure can be the result of vitamin D deficiency, of mineral deficiency. See, all the things that can come together to cause high blood pressure. And we've seen people totally turn around high blood pressure. Whereas in the weak we see diabetes really turn around, because basically our blood sugar levels are dependent on the food we're eating. But regarding blood pressure, we don't see a great drop in that just in a week. that sometimes can take a couple of months. A couple of months of implementing the Sustain Me principles and little by little by little bringing normality back in and out of the cell. We had one guy and his name was Henry. He was a retired judge, and he came to our program and he was not interested in changing his medication. He was about, I think, 69. He was a bit overweight, probably carrying about 70-pound excess weight. He was on medication for blood pressure, for blood thinning, for blood cholesterol, for blood sugar, and gout and stomach ulcers. So he was on 6 medications. So we gave him the hawthorn berry tea to drink through the day because of his high blood pressure. He heard the lectures at the end of the week. He said, "Thank you, Barbara." He said, "I've very much enjoyed my week. I will take some hawthorn berries home with me and continue." Now, he rang me 4 months later. He said, "I'd like to come and visit, get some more hawthorn berries." I said, "Come for lunch, Henry." Now, when I opened the door, I did not recognise Henry. He had lost 40 kilos. So the puffiness in his face had gone. He said, "I can do my coat up now." He said, "Sit down, I have some stories for you." He said, "I went to the doctor recently to have my blood pressure taken, and the doctor said, I'll have to get another machine." And he said, "Why?" He said, "Well, your blood pressure, this machine says your blood pressure says it is 120 over 75. He said, "That's not your blood pressure." He said, "It is now." So the doctor took him off his blood pressure medication. The doctor took him off his blood thinning medication because his blood was just perfect. His doctor took him off his cholesterol lowering medication because, well, the doctor even reckoned that the cholesterol was in the right range. He said, "I'm off all my medication." Who took him off? His doctor. Because everything was normal. I think this is an interesting story because this man chose to stay on his medication. There are many that come that say, "I'm going to stop the meds." But I believe that it's far better to get the lifestyle principles in place, and then some medication can be stopped immediately, like your blood thinning and your blood cholesterol, absolutely. But as the lifestyle changes and as the blood pressure comes down, you can ease off the medication. As the blood sugar comes down, you got to ease off the medication. The doctor took him off the medication, otherwise Henry'd start fainting everywhere because his blood pressure would go too low. Remember what the drugs do? They've got a one-set mind. They're robots. I must do, whether you need it or not. He said, "I have no more gout." He said, "I have no more stomach ulcer." And the doctor said, "I don't need the total knee replacement operation anymore because knees don't like that excess weight." Incredible story. I said, "Henry, tell me what you're eating." He said, "I have a big spaghetti bowl every morning of whole grain and fruit and coconut cream." Did you hear that? All that weight loss on coconut cream. I had some sourdough bread with avocado and tomato. He was a bachelor. He said, and then at lunchtime, he said, "I have my main meal about 2. And he said, "And I have salad, I have vegetables, and I have some sort of protein from what you've taught me." He said, "I only have to cook that twice a week, and then I freeze it in bits. And I have another slice of sourdough bread with avocado and tomato." And he said, "And I do not eat again till breakfast." He's a very decisive man. That's not a light diet, is it? In fact, he wrote to me 2 years after that and said, he said, to date it's 70 kilos, 70-pound loss. That's about 38 kilos. See? He said, "I've stopped coffee. I drink water now." He said, "I don't have wine anymore. If I'm with my friends of an evening," he said, I get the non-alcoholic grape juice wine. I said, "Tell me about your exercise program." He said, "I find I can walk another block every week." So the more he exercised, the stronger he got, the less weight, he could go further for even less effort. I think it's an incredible story, and I know why this man got results. He just did it. He saw it, it made sense, so he just did it. I think, I don't know, but I think he could have actually gone back to the bench. He was retired. But what incredible results. You know, we should enjoy our retirements. And how many people don't? How many people are looking forward to the day when they stop work, and how many people go down? So an incredible body that has an inbuilt ability to heal itself. But how important is it to drink water? Use of water. Oops, sorry, wrong colour. Use of water. There's a time to drink water and there's a time not to drink water.